Imagine a force of divine love and light, so pure and overwhelming, it cannot even be fully comprehended by human minds. A force that exists but remains concealed, veiled from the world. Now, imagine this divine essence existing alongside a different figure, one who is often described as wrathful, jealous, and merciless. A figure who punishes humanity with unimaginable severity, and whose actions leave us questioning his true nature. How can the same holy text portray two completely contrasting representations of the divine? Could these depictions be referring to two entirely different gods? It's a question that has echoed through the ages, one that goes beyond the surface of mainstream religious beliefs. And today, we're about to reveal a truth that has been hidden for centuries. One that will challenge everything you thought you knew about God, the Bible, and your own spiritual journey. The belief in a higher, secret God has long been a subject of interest for those who have ventured into the ancient teachings of Gnosticism. This higher God is described as the ultimate source of light, love, and spiritual awakening, completely separate from the harsh, controlling God often depicted in the Old Testament. The ancient Gnostics, who preserved and passed down these hidden teachings, believed that the God of the Bible, often seen as jealous, wrathful, and punitive, was not the true creator of the universe. Instead, they argued that this God, whom they referred to as the Demiurge, was a flawed being who had mistakenly been revered as the ultimate deity. For the Gnostics, the true God exists beyond the realm of material creation, beyond human comprehension, and is a source of divine light and wisdom that has been obscured for millennia. The teachings of this higher, hidden God were not widely embraced in mainstream religious circles. In fact, they were actively suppressed, their messages buried within banned texts like the Secret Book of John and the Gospel of Thomas, which offer profound insights into a new understanding of spiritual order. When we look at the Bible through the lens of Gnostic teachings, certain passages begin to stand out. Passages that seem to contradict the very essence of divine love and forgiveness. Take, for instance, the terrifying and brutal warnings found in the book of Deuteronomy, particularly in Deuteronomy 28. There, we read of the horrifying consequences for those who fail to serve God with a joyful heart, including the forced cannibalization of their own children. How do we reconcile this image with a God who is said to be loving, compassionate, and merciful? Critics of mainstream religious teachings argue that we can't. The dissonance between the messages of love and these stark depictions of cruelty has been a source of confusion for centuries, one that the Gnostics sought to address. For them, these violent images were not the work of the true God, but rather the actions of the Demiurge, a flawed entity that controls the material world through fear, manipulation, and suffering. According to Gnostic teachings, Jesus Christ was not the son of the wrathful God depicted in the Old Testament, but rather a messenger sent by the higher hidden God. Jesus came to guide humanity away from the suffering and ignorance imposed by the Demiurge and to lead us toward a deeper understanding of our true nature. He was not here to enforce the oppressive laws of the Old Testament God, but to teach us the path of enlightenment, self-realization, and spiritual liberation. We see evidence of this divergence not only in the Gnostic texts that were suppressed, but also in the contradictions within the Bible itself. For example, in the book of Numbers, we encounter a passage that describes a divine curse leading to the miscarriage of a child, a punishment imposed by the biblical God. This starkly contrasts with the teachings of Jesus, who spoke of love, healing, and forgiveness. How can these two figures, one embodying wrath and the other embodying love, be the same divine being? The Old Testament is full of violent and vengeful depictions of God, passages where God commands wars, inflicts curses, and causes suffering. Yet in the New Testament, Jesus speaks of love, forgiveness, and redemption. How could these two contrasting images of divinity possibly come from the same source? The Gnostics argued that they could not. For them, the wrathful and jealous God of the Old Testament was not the true God, but a lower flawed being, the Demiurge, who was mistakenly elevated to supreme status. One of the most striking examples of this tension can be found in the book of Numbers, where Moses, acting under divine command, leads his people to kill men, women, and children, only sparing young girls. Such stories, filled with violence and cruelty, seem incomprehensible by modern standards, and they raise serious questions about the nature of the deity described within these texts. In the Old Testament, Yahweh is often depicted as a warrior god, commanding armies, inflicting plagues, and engaging in brutal conflicts. In Deuteronomy 32:39-43, we encounter a deity whose arrows are said to drink blood and whose swords devour flesh. This portrayal of God aligns with the Gnostic view that Yahweh was a god of war, conflict, and control, one who was later elevated to monotheistic status by religious authorities. This violent characterization of God stands in stark contrast to the teachings of Jesus, who emphasized peace, love, and forgiveness. If Yahweh and Jesus were truly the same God, the Gnostics reasoned, how could these two figures embody such drastically different qualities? For the Gnostics, this contradiction pointed to the idea that the wrathful God of the Old Testament was not the true source of creation, but a lower, imperfect being. The early Christian movement faced a significant theological divide when it came to reconciling the teachings of Jesus with the violent depictions of God found in the Old Testament. Many early Christians wrestled with the question of how Jesus, who embodied love, compassion, and grace, could be aligned with a deity who demanded strict obedience, punished sinners with eternal torment, and commanded wars of conquest. In response to this dilemma, groups like the Gnostics and Marcionites proposed a radical solution. They argued that Jesus was not the son of the wrathful Old Testament God, but the emissary of a higher benevolent deity, the true God who was separate from the Demiurge. For the Gnostics, the teachings of Jesus revealed a path to spiritual enlightenment, one that would liberate humanity from the oppressive grip of the Demiurge and guide us back to our true divine source. Speaking of liberation, if you're ready to attract huge money effortlessly, starting today, you won't want to miss this. Check the link in the comments below to uncover the shocking wealth secrets revealed by a rogue NASA scientist. Secrets that have already transformed millions of lives and are going viral in the spiritual community. Make sure to check it out before it's gone. Now let's dive back into this fascinating exploration. Over time, the early Christian church sought to reconcile these contradictions by selectively interpreting Scripture. Passages that described violent acts committed by God were often downplayed or reinterpreted, while the teachings of Jesus on love and forgiveness were emphasized. Yet, despite these efforts to harmonize the two perspectives, the tension between the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament remained unresolved. For the Gnostics, this dissonance confirmed their belief in a spiritual duality. The Old Testament God, they argued, was the ruler of the material realm, a flawed, controlling being who imposed fear and suffering on humanity. In contrast, the true God, the hidden God, was a divine source of light and love, existing beyond the material world and offering humanity a path to transcendence. For the Gnostics, Jesus was not just a religious figure, but a spiritual teacher who came to show humanity the way to self-realization. Unlike the Old Testament God, who demanded obedience through fear, Jesus preached a message of inner transformation, urging his followers to seek enlightenment, wisdom, and spiritual freedom. Through Jesus' teachings, the Gnostics believed humanity could awaken to its true divine nature and break free from the material world's limitations. This concept of liberation through spiritual awakening is central to Gnostic thought. Jesus was seen as a guide, helping individuals reconnect with the divine light within them, a light that had been obscured by the illusions of the material world. The Gnostic view of Jesus and the hidden God posed a significant threat to the emerging Christian orthodoxy. At the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century, religious leaders sought to solidify the Christian faith under a singular narrative, one that would align Jesus with the wrathful God of the Old Testament. This process involved suppressing alternative views, such as those held by the Gnostics, who saw Jesus as a liberator from the material world, rather than an enforcer of its laws. As a result, Gnostic texts were banned, their communities persecuted, and their teachings marginalized. The Gnostics, who believed that true spiritual knowledge came from within, were labeled heretics, and their insights were buried beneath centuries of theological orthodoxy. At the heart of Gnostic thought is the idea of the One, an infinite, transcendent divine essence that exists beyond all material and cosmic constructs. The One is not bound by form or emotion, but is a pure, untainted source of divine light. It is within every being, a spark of divine consciousness waiting to be awakened. Jesus, according to Gnostics, came to help humanity recognize this divine spark within themselves, to see that they were not separate from the divine, but integral parts of it. This understanding of the One challenges traditional religious views, which often place divinity outside of human experience. For the Gnostics, the journey toward self-realization was not about worshiping an external deity, but about recognizing and reconnecting with the divine essence within. One of the most compelling stories in Gnostic thought is the allegory of Sophia, a divine being who represents wisdom. According to the Gnostics, Sophia stepped outside the harmony of the divine realm to create something on her own. This act, driven by curiosity or rebellion, resulted in the creation of Yaldabaoth, a distorted being who embodied chaos and ignorance. Yaldabaoth, in turn, created the material universe as a reflection of his disordered mind. Yaldabaoth, fearful of the divine light within humanity, trapped human souls in the material world and blinded them to their true nature. This suppression of spiritual knowledge, the Gnostics believed, is the root of humanity's suffering. Yaldabaoth's minions, the archons, serve as extensions of his will, perpetuating ignorance and preventing humanity from awakening to its divine origins. These archons are thought to represent the forces that keep humanity trapped in the material world. Forces like mainstream religion, scientific materialism, and capitalist systems, which distract us from recognizing our true nature. For the Gnostics, the battle for spiritual enlightenment was a battle against these forces of suppression. The journey to awakening required breaking free from the illusions imposed by the archons and reconnecting with the divine essence within. In the modern world, the forces that prevent spiritual awakening are still very much alive. Mainstream religions often place divinity as an external entity to be worshipped, reinforcing the idea of separation between humanity and the divine. Scientific materialism reduces human existence to a mere accident in an indifferent cosmos, leaving little room for spiritual exploration or understanding. Capitalism, meanwhile, anchors humanity in the pursuit of material wealth and survival, distracting us from the deeper questions of existence. These modern systems, much like the archons in Gnostic thought, work to keep humanity from recognizing its divine potential. But the spark of awakening remains within each of us, waiting to be realized. The Gnostic path to enlightenment is one of self-realization and spiritual awakening. It involves questioning the external systems that impose limitations on our understanding of reality and seeking knowledge that transcends the material world. This journey is not about worshiping a distant, wrathful God, but about reconnecting with the divine essence within ourselves. Ultimately, the goal of the Gnostic path is to transcend the material world and awaken to the spiritual truth that lies beyond. It is a path of freedom, liberation, and divine knowledge, one that has the power to transform not only our understanding of God, but also our understanding of who we truly are. The story of the hidden God and the wrathful God is not just a theological debate. It's a journey into the heart of human spirituality. It's a call to awaken to the divine truth that lies beyond the material world and reconnect with the true essence of love and light. The Gnostics knew this truth, and their teachings, though suppressed, still resonate with us today. By shedding the illusions imposed by the Demiurge and his archons, we can rediscover our true divine nature and begin the journey towards spiritual liberation. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this exploration of Gnostic thought and the hidden God intriguing, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. The truth is out there, waiting to be discovered.